I had a great conversation with Ari Salvatore once when I met him way back long before I was a writer, where I didn't know it was him because it was before the internet, and so I didn't know what he looked like. And the picture on the back of his book didn't really do him justice. And I just happened to be in a bookstore that I was there to meet him because he was doing a signing, but he was down browsing books or whatever. And he was in the fantasy section. And I was talking to the girl who worked there, and he was talking to her, and I was like, "Well, Ari Salvatore is like my favorite author. He's one of the best." And I didn't know it was him. And he's like, "Well, I think C.S. Lewis is much better than me." And then I was like, so just be aware of what people look like and who you're talking to. That thing.
Welcome to the Military Science Fiction Podcast. We are four veterans, although Josh Hayes is coming in late today, who are crazy enough to become writers, and we're here to talk about what makes great military SF, the greatest niche within a niche of any fiction, more niche than the con we're going to talk about today, LibertyCon, which is about a niche, science fiction, and only allows 1,000 people to participate. So that's super duper niche.
Actually, a different 1,000 people every year. No,
yes. They never gain fame. So on board is Rick Partlow, author of more than 60 novels, including Contact Front and the Drop Trooper series, Jeffrey H. Haskell, author of the Grimm's War series, as well as the Wraith and Arsenal superhero series, Josh Hayes, author of the Valor series and operations manager and head of thriller acquisitions for Aethon Books, and I'm James S. Aaron, author of the Aeon 14 Sentience Wars and Galactic Law series. So between the four of us, we bring more than 100 novels written. Most of that is Rick, of course. More than 30 years publishing experience, and on the military side, we'd be retired by now if we'd stuck around. So join our Discord server to tell us how much you love us. And as I was saying, today we're talking about LibertyCon because Rick and I just came back, but Jeff and Josh did not attend. So we're also just going to talk about cons in general, what we like, what we don't like, what you should look for. Should you attend them? Should you not? If you haven't written anything, should you go? Like, should you be, concerned that you're not professional enough or whatever? So yeah.
I'd like to point out that I went to LibertyCon last year and DragonCon last year.
You did.
And Writers Cantina last year. And 20 books to 50K in Vegas last year. So I went to 4 cons last year, and then this year I decided that I was going to focus more on writing than I was on going to cons, though I absolutely love going to cons.
You look like your coffee cup is obscene and you're obscuring the face of it.
Is it hiding it?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it blurs it out.
What's funny about this coffee cup is my daughter covered it in stickers, which haven't come off. So I don't know. It's kind of funny to me every time I look at it.
Stickers are being obscured because those people are not yet supporting our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Subscribe to this podcast. No, Jeff, we got to play up that you're like a hermit curmudgeon. And so when people do meet you, they'll be like, who is this crazy extroverted author who's coming up to talk to me at a con?
Who's this white unicorn?
Who is this white unicorn? So, all right. Rick, let's start with LibertyCon, and then we'll get into other cons. So, Rick, how'd you feel this year? Because yes, you had been before, and you have things to compare it to.
Honestly, this year I'm a little torn because it felt like there was a lot of people that didn't show up this year, and a lot of the big names that did show up weren't making themselves available for anything except a few private functions that they, in their presentations. So it gave the whole thing kind of a subdued atmosphere. But I mean, for the people that were there, had fun, had a lot of good conversations and interesting panels talking about some interesting subjects. So that was very cool. It just, in previous years, it's been a pretty much a company con for Bain books.
Mhm.
And this year Bain seemed to not be as prominent.
Who didn't show up?
Well, Larry didn't come.
Oh, he
and-
didn't? I thought he'd be there.
No, he did not. Steve didn't come either. The only big names that were there were David Weber and John Ringo. Tony came, and all three of them were barely seen.
Well, I know Ringo. I mean, I've never met the guy, but from what I've heard, he is a kind of the hermit recluse. So, but David,
He's been at I've been with him at LibertyCon before, and at DragonCon, and with other authors in their stable, and yeah, it just seemed like
were any of the people we met last year there? There was that guy who was starting a shooting range, and there was Tony Anderton and a couple other people that we talked to.
I don't think Tony Anderton was there. Let me see who I'm trying to think of the people that were. Well, like, for example, Timothy Zahn wasn't there.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was in
He's in Dallas, I think.
Yeah, I know. HP Hollow and Jacob Hollow were there.
I ran into them,
and I know the Presbys were there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always fun to talk to.
Yes, and
Debonair Snake Launcher is Joel Presby's debut sci-fi novel that got a bunch of acclaim last year.
And her husband works for NASA.
The literal rocket scientist.
There were a few literal rocket scientists.
Yes, there were.
Here.
I mean, Todd McCaffrey was there.
Yeah.
Tim Akers was there. There was a lot of people there, but they just the big names were conspicuous by their absence. Let's put it that way.
Well, I wasn't there, so you know.
Jeff Haskell.
Probably why they didn't come.
I know, they heard.
And why the others didn't hang around much, because they were like, I came here to talk to Haskell and he didn't show up, so I'm just gonna hang out in my room.
Suckers. We probably should touch on, like, if you're not familiar with LibertyCon, like Rick was saying, it tends to be it's limited to 1,000 people. It tended to have a really strong Bain Books presence, but it's separated off from Chattanooga, which is another con that's in the Chattanooga area. It's in Chattanooga. And it tends to have, I guess, just compared to other cons that I've been to, I was really surprised by the large kind of military veteran presence, which
big veteran presence.
Yeah, which for me felt very comfortable. I don't know, I just haven't.
Not
just
vibe. Like guys like us who were, officers or enlisted and got out and later became writers. Just people there that retired after 30 years in the service, and
all different kinds of jobs in the branches. We were all kind of frontline people, and like you got analysts and you got intelligence guys.
The aforementioned Andy Presby was, I think, in nuclear submarines or something.
Yeah. Shane, what's his last name?
Shane Grease.
Shane Grease, yeah.
But he's been working at like the military attaché in Australia.
Yeah.
I do wish I could have been there this year, because last year there was this big argument that blew up about drones, and there were all these long-time 30-year veteran guys, analyst guys, talking about all this, drone swarms and all this stuff that was going to be the future.
There's a lot of discussion of that this year too,
and how the U.S. was woefully unprepared to deal with it. And I just would have liked to have been there to tell them I told you so, because I told them that the CRAM and the CWIZ and the lasers Lockheed are developing were more than enough to deal with drones. And, what do you know? I was right. Just want to say that out loud.
So I had 5 panels while I was there. I wound up moderating 4.5 of them. And I say half because I was on the past and future of kinetic energy weapons. And the guy who was supposed to moderate was 10 minutes late getting there because there was a room change. So me and the guy at the other end of the table did rock, paper, scissors to see who was going to moderate until he got there. And I lost, so he made me do it.
The last thing I wanted to note is, if you are interested in going after this discussion, or if you're not scared away, This con does sell out like within an hour. So I would definitely go to it's libertycon.org is the website. And they've already got the info on when they're going to open it. I want to say like July
20th.
20th. Yeah, somewhere in there. So I would definitely, if it sounds interesting, or even if, you could if you reserve a ticket and don't use it, somebody will, it will go to a good cause if you don't end up using it. But
It's
it's
also one of the cons that's not expensive. It's 70,
yeah, it
last
was
year was $75.
$65, I think.
Yeah.
And you need to reserve a hotel room just as soon as the hotel blocks open up,
right.
which is not at the same time. And because those hotel rooms sell out pretty quick too.
And of the people, like one other piece of after action review, poor Jonathan Brazy stayed at a hotel that on paper looked like it was just a mile away, and it just turned out to be a terrible experience for him. Like there was some, base party in the parking lot every night at 2 a.m. and folks having mental health crisis and stuff. So he wasn't sleeping too well. Then he'd have to come over, and of course, you want all the great stuff. I mean, there were parties until like 2 a.m.
And if I can give you any advice about staying in the hotel, attempt to get a room on a high floor as you can. Because the higher the floor, the more separated you are from all the partying that's going on down below.
On the third floor.
Just con advice in general, and everybody's always trying to look for a deal or look for an off-site hotel where they can save some money. It's just not worth it. If I'm not saying you have to fly first class and stay in a suite.
I am.
But we're not all rich.
I mean, I do fly first class, and if a suite's available, I usually try to save up the money to get it every year, just like in Vegas, because it makes the experience so much nicer. But the closer you stay to the actual con, where all the events are happening, there's a thing they call bar con that happens after the con, and it's always in the hotel bar of whatever hotel is hosting the event, and that is the real con. That's where you meet people. It's where you get. It's where you make your contacts. It's where you spitball ideas. You meet future writing partners. It's
the long con.
Yeah, so it's the long con. But so everybody's always trying to save money. I know Jonathan, like last year, he drove up from Georgia instead of flying, which actually was a good idea because the flight from Georgia is just as expensive to Tennessee is just as expensive as it was from Salt Lake City to Georgia. But stay in the hotel that the con is offering. Don't try to save some money or scrimp some money by staying somewhere else. Just stay in the hotel that the con.
And to be fair to Jonathan, I think he just missed the hotel block. I think he had every intention of staying.
Well, he didn't last year either.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so this was my first year, I guess, to get my impression of things, and everybody had encouraged going, and I'm already wishing I had gone before. And I would say the one big piece of advice I would give if you're thinking about it is even if you only have one book out, like register as a pro. I wish that I had registered as a pro and I didn't because I wanted to get an idea just what things were like. Our friend Lisa Richmond went as a pro. This con has a very aggressive schedule and they want to fill it up. So they're going to give you things to do. I think Lisa was on 3 panels. Rick was on 5 panels. Lisa had a reading. Also did a panel with John Ringo, which I thought was hilarious, where he did 3 different panels introducing first timers. And so he was just like super crotchety guy, like, tell me about what you do. And then they go down the list and that was pretty funny. But there's definitely a lot of great opportunities, I think, for if you are a pro, but even if you're a first year, like don't wait to do that would be my recommendation.
I'd love to find out from Lisa how many people showed up to her reading, because the guy, Rich, who runs the con last year, he's like, did you want to do a reading? And I'm like, nobody wants to listen to me read. And he said, you'd be surprised. People will come to a reading just to hear new works.
Yeah.
It isn't necessarily about your fans showing up.
Well, Lisa had the benefit of her reading was at the same time as Rothman's, right?
I don't know, but she did. So one thing I thought they did do that was great, and I would volunteer for this if they don't offer it, but she shared the reading with Jamie Ibsen.
Oh, Ibsen, that's who it was.
Yeah. And he does he's got several series and does a bunch of anthologies and whatnot. So it's just a great networking opportunity. So, I mean, you're right. I think like 15 people showed up, which was good. There were definitely, I talked to, one poor guy that nobody showed up to his reading. Yeah. So I think you got to pimp it a little bit if you're doing it, like talk to people, let them know what you're doing. And there is a lot of like conflicting programming. So it'll be something cool you want to see. but then, something else is going on. And as far as I know, nothing was recorded, which is good and bad, like you got to go there to experience the thing. But that's the,
I wanted to go to more panels, but I was on so many, and then between those you got to get lunch and stuff, and
right. There was no time
dinner.
to eat. Food was not programmed. I mean, there was programming pretty much from like, I didn't attend anything before noon just because I was sleepy, but pretty much from like noon until 10 p.m. I kid you not.
James did not bother to adjust to Eastern time while he was there.
No, I did not.
But
But
Tennessee though has some dang good food.
He was up at like 3. He was up till about 3 in the morning.
I know last year Jonathan and I went to like a steakhouse a couple of blocks away. There was
me and Jonathan went to that one again, but actually the food wasn't as good this time.
No, that's too bad.
Yeah.
We went to there was like a breakfast place that everybody walked to, a bunch of like 50 or 60
It's
people walked
out of
to.
business now.
Yeah, that went out of business. Okay, well maybe it sucks now. Don't go.
We went to a chicken and waffle place that was, I mean, one person, Travis Cox had posted that he had a terrible experience there. And so we saw that right as we walked in the place. And I mean, it was okay. It was just, I mean, we were a large group. I mean, but they were out a ton of stuff. That was one thing. What was the name of that place?
They're out of white meat, I believe.
Yeah.
How can you be out? It's 6:30 on a Monday night. How can a chicken place be out of white meat?
If I recall correctly, though, the hotel bar, the food there wasn't that bad.
It was good.
It was good. And the hotel is nice. I mean, it's a decent hotel. So
I ate most of my meals at the hotel bar. I just didn't see any reason to go anywhere else.
I know it like a longer con, like 20 books, you get tired of the hotel food really fast. After the second day, you're like, I don't want to eat this place anymore.
Yeah.
But with Tennessee, there it's a nice little place for food and walking around. The whole place is nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I wish I'd had time. I guess because the program was so there was so much of it, I kind of wanted to get out and walk around. I guess I could have slept less, but there's really no opportunity to see.
Sleep is for the weak at a con.
I know. You're not going to see Chattanooga, so just get over that. It might as well be in the desert or something. But so the other thing that I really enjoyed about it was take a Sharpie and write your name on the backside of your this is just general con advice, on the backside of your name tag, because my thing is always flipping over and that makes me crazy. But everybody was
people always staring at your tag looking for your name, and
exactly.
half the time they can't see it because it slipped around the wrong way.
Yep. But everybody was so friendly. Everybody from the, I mean, if you're a fan, almost everybody, not right. Yeah.
Does this need to be an offline conversation?
No, there's just like, that's another thing about being a moderator. You're on a panel, and after the panel, there's always somebody who's like, yeah, I should have been on that panel. I knew more than any of the people you had on there.
Oh yeah, that guy.
I got this experience and that experience, and I'm like, hey man,
are you an author?
You should. I don't know. I said, hey man, you should take that up with the people who organized the panel, because I wasn't even supposed to be the moderator until 2 days ago. So talk to somebody else.
I always figured those panels are it's nice if you have the knowledge, but first and foremost, you need to be an author or be a writer.
I don't know. I don't think Andy Presby's a writer, is he? But
with few exceptions, there are obviously always exceptions. But when one of you, and you may not relate to this, Rick, but I do. When one of you is a writer, both of you are writers to some degree. You know what I mean? Like, I don't write these books in a vacuum. Rebecca's always there to bounce ideas off of.
If you wrote the books in a vacuum, you'd have been dead before you finished the first one.
No, I can hold my breath a long time. And in fact, movies have taught me anything. If I close my eyes and cover my ears, I'm good.
Right.
But so I'm pretty sure Andy has a lot. I'm pretty sure Andy's involved in the writing process. So at least he's tangentially, he's related to it in some way.
He's related to it by marriage.
Yeah.
Well, he had deep expertise too, but I mean, I know
every once in a while you'll meet some random Joe, and he's like, "I should be on that panel," and I'm like, "Well, who are you?" I mean,
better register.
Yeah,
I mean, I saw
sure,
Although,
write a book.
There was a panel that I had moderated that I recruited a random Joe from the audience as a panelist, because I was moderating a panel. If you want something esoteric, man, is OSINT the new SIPRNet? Which means OSINT.
You okay? Are you having a stroke?
Yes, OSINT is open source intelligence, like the internet or the
Right.
news, things like that. CIPRNet is a classified, air-gapped military intranet that you disseminate classified information to those with a need to know by giving them special terminals that only allow them to access things for that mission, and then they're given a code to put in that like puts them at a level of need to know for even that mission. If they need to know, they think they need to know more, they have to request a higher code. So it's incredibly segmented. It disseminates things on a need to know basis, whereas OSINT is something you can get from everywhere and give to anybody. So that was the general idea behind it. So I get there and I have 5 panelists, including myself, and 3 of them are bound by NDAs and keep telling me I can't talk about that because I signed an NDA. I can't really discuss that. That's classified. You're muted.
Whose idea was the panel? Because usually the
This guy who's the other panel couldn't come, and the guy he had as the moderator was formerly, I don't know, formerly or currently in the CIA. Hey, Josh, and he couldn't answer anything. And I talked to him about, oh, glad you're here. You can be the moderator. He says, actually, I'm thinking I can't be on the panel.
I would have been like, listen, I know you all came to listen to some esoteric intelligence panel, but we're not talking about this because nobody can talk about it.
Right.
Well, what happened was there was a guy in the audience who had spent a lot of time in communications and stuff with the Department of Defense, and we brought him in and he talked. He was able to talk, and even there's some things that he couldn't talk about even. So it was like a nightmare of a panel. I wish I'd never been on it. I don't know why I was on it. I didn't know anything about it. CIPRNet came along after I was out of the Army.
I never even heard of it before, and I was calm.
We had it, but it was still very primitive, I guess, because it was just the secret side of the internet. So if you're going to send anything, you do it on CIPRNet. But I don't know. I thought that panel was kind of funny. I mean, there were a couple interesting things that came out of it, but the whole NDA thing just felt a little like, I'm too important to talk about this because I have an NDA. Yeah, it's like, well, go to the NDA mixer where nobody talks about anything and just can just stare at each other. It was like
the tech future of warfare was a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
but that's the one where everybody in the audience thinks they're an expert too, and at
least people. I will say one thing about this whole crowd in general. Like, people generally knew what you were talking about. Like, I get pretty tired of, I shouldn't say tired, but it gets hard sometimes interacting with people that don't understand anything about the military, don't think about any of these things, you got to explain what basic stuff is. I mean, there's a certain level of, shared understanding here that makes it pretty easy to talk about whatever you want to talk about, like stuff that you're interested in.
Well, I get people telling me a lot, like, you need to tone down the military stuff in your books. Josh, you've read Against All Odds. You guys, I think, have all read it. And I think I do a pretty good job of explaining what the military stuff is. But at the same time, I'm going to assume a level of knowledge in my readers and an ability to use the internet if they don't understand something, and just go with it. Because I feel like dumbing down what you're doing for the lowest common denominator, just all you end up doing is dumbing it down. You're not adding anything to it. And the 5 people who don't know, what a RP is, a rally point is, well, I mean, they're out of luck, so it's nice to be able to, like, you set your bar here and go, like, this is the bar I'm writing to. This is the bar I'm talking to. And I shouldn't have to explain that, I have to breathe and then I have to eat, before you have a conversation. Because there's always those pedants who are like, oh, you have to take a day off, and you have to breathe. I'm like, well, let's just assume that we all know how to be functioning human beings and that we know what the military is. Let's just start there and then go on.
One thing about
can you explain to our audience what a pedant is now?
Rick is a pedant. No.
I think one of the interesting things about
I know what it is. It's
okay.
a joke.
One of the interesting things I think about writing military fiction, at least, and reading it, is being able to put in those things that are authentic that people might not get. but the people that understand it will get it and they'll appreciate it. And you know, the thing like you're saying with the RP, and I apologize for coming in late, but the thing you were saying about RP is you can, those are things that you can
Ladies and
very
gentlemen, his dogs are more important to him than you are.
that's
This is true.
yeah, that's true. Well,
Especially since
my
it's
wife telling me to do it is more important than this. But the, you know, the RP thing and very a lot of things that fall in this area can be explained very easily through context. And you know, even if it's you have the RP as part of a dialogue, and then in the very next sentence or something go, and they were moving to the rally point, and like it's very easy to do a lot of that stuff through context without like just spoon feeding the definitions or having a sentence that says, and this is what they were talking about. You know, Peter F. Hamilton does this a lot in his science fiction, where the learning curve of what you're reading is extremely high. And he does that on purpose. And I think that there are a lot of good military sci-fi authors and just military authors in general that write to the level of their experience and their expertise. And as a reader, if you're not there, then take the time to get there, or just enjoy the story for what it is and understand that they know what they're talking about. It's, you know, like there's some medical thrillers that I've read where I have absolutely, or even medical shows that I've watched, and I have absolutely no idea what they're saying. Absolutely no idea. Like
Sometimes that's advantageous, because then when you look it up, you're like, oh, yeah, that guy didn't have a stint coming out of his eye. What the heck?
for sure. Yeah. Well, and it's like when you watch military shows or cop shows or whatever it is, you're like, that's not how it happens. And my wife watched medical shows. She says the same thing. But for me, I don't know anything about medical. So when they start rattling off these medical terms and surgery things and all of that, I'm just like, they know what they're talking about. Like, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because I'm not going to look it up.
So it's nice to be at a con, especially like LibertyCon, where it is heavily military focused, where like you could just assume your audience knows what the hell they're talking about, and no one knows what you're talking about, and you don't have to explain every little thing. And that's kind of the level I write to as well. And, you know, obviously you want to moderate what you're saying to the audience that you're speaking to. Like if I was on a panel on DragonCon, I'm not going to drop a bunch of Army acronyms. But I mean, like, if
yes, well, in LibertyCon you might.
In LibertyCon you might, but I mean, if I'm on a panel at DragonCon, I probably wouldn't. But like, everybody should know what ComSec is. You know, it's basic stuff. And if you don't, look it up. You know, simple as that.
Everybody should practice ComSec.
There is Google.
And if you're putting that in your book again, like a lot of that stuff is very easily described through context and
there's another con hint for you, by the way, as an author. When you go to a con at a hotel, my advice is for anything you're going to be using, like to connect with your bank or your credit card company, don't use the hotel internet. Don't use the Wi-Fi. Use your phone. Use your phone, and don't connect your phone to the Wi-Fi at all. Use your phone's data to do anything financial when you go to a hotel.
Yeah. So something fun that happened to me, like I don't think this was related to the con, but I mean, I guess this would be another tip, is no sooner had we arrived, we go to the bar to get a drink, I get an alert on my main credit card that somebody's trying to charge $2,300 at Spectrum Mobile, whatever that is. So like I immediately get the text saying, we think you have fraud.
Company.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And so I mean, long story short, my card got deactivated within 5 minutes of arriving at the hotel. So
that's happened to me once before too.
Yeah. So I mean, I had backup cards. It wasn't a big deal, but I did have to deal with then changing.
That's the other
thing. A lot
of
times banks too will if like all of a sudden you're doing a lot of charges on your card outside of the state you live in, banks sometimes put a hold on those charges until you contact them, let them know that you're actually traveling.
It's another thing I do for cons or when I'm traveling out of town, especially. I have a card that has a very low limit on it.
Right.
And I will try to use that for any situation where I hand my card to somebody and they run it away from me, like in a restaurant.
I know last year, Dragon, that happened to me with one of my cards is I used it on a Lime, and 5 minutes later, they sent me a message saying, "Hey, we're seeing like a couple $100 worth of Lime purchases on your card. Did you authorize this?" And I'm like, "No." And somebody must have had a scanner on that Lime or had a RFID scanner or something. And they're trying to give everybody in Georgia a free Lime ride.
Huh.
Lime is the
I
scooter company.
had to talk
Lime
my
scooter,
wife into
yeah.
getting. I had to talk my wife into getting a whole bunch of RFID sleeves, because like my wallet is RFID. It's a hard plastic case, and I don't go anywhere without it. But my wife had her purse stolen a couple of years ago out of her car, and so lost all her credit cards and all of that. Well, then a couple of months back, it happened again where we were getting notifications of charges from these other cards, and she's like, "These aren't the stolen cards; these are the new ones." And I said, "Where did you go?" And she's like, "I don't know. I was walking around Walmart or something." And I said, "Did you go did you go to a gas station or use your card there?" She's like, "No, you know." And I said, "Well, somebody probably walked by you with a scanner and boosted your card, and now they're using it." And so I was able to convince her to get these sleeves, even though they didn't fit in her wallet. Surprisingly, they don't make a lot of RFID proof, like nice purses. They're all like ugly bags that.
What you
But
need is a service that will build a Faraday cage for the inside of your purse.
Well, most
yeah, no
most,
joke.
most women use they'll have their purse and then they'll have a little clutch for their ID and stuff like that, and those are really easy to get RFID proof. Becky's
Yeah.
got a bunch of them, and they're all really nice, gold and pink and rose. And most wallets these days are RFID.
Yeah.
Josh turned me on to these great wallets last year, Dragon Con. I just absolutely love. His is metal or more metal than mine because I like the soft leather exterior, but
I don't see any band.
I know
logos
that's not
on it.
metal enough. I don't
not
see
metal
any,
enough.
like, triple unicorns or
It's hard plastic, but it's
have,
also
the
like
horns on
spring
that
loaded.
wallet.
yeah, Josh. Yeah, and I can't. I never got to say thank you about that, Josh. But thank you so much for showing me that because it changed
Oh,
my
yeah, for sure.
life.
Speaking of military sci-fi, this is not military and it's not sci-fi, but I went shooting today. And let's see if I
I
can.
want to go shooting.
I had to do
Well, Josh went. You should have gone with him.
my annual qual, and I got 98% on my rate, my
Congratulations.
A
retirement.
Glock 17, huh?
Yeah.
Did it have to be a Glock?
I don't carry anything but Glock. Because the simple reason is I'm not a huge gun guy. I love guns, but I'm not a huge guy. I don't collect them and I don't buy a whole bunch of them.
Short,
And
I've met you.
on the on the police department, that's what we shot. And so that's what I shoot. All my backup guns are small Glocks or regular Glocks. And
So is it like
I
a
just
department issued firearm?
this one is but I have a couple other ones that are not. And
You couldn't show up with like a Desert Eagle 50 cal and be like,
well, for the
"Go
return
ahead,
shoot,
punk, make my day."
Couldn't show up.
I mean,
Couldn't show
you
up
can shoot
with the
whatever.
deagle with the beams.
Yeah. You can shoot whatever you want. I always carry Glock because I know how the Glock works and how to function and all of that. I know
That's an underrated but extremely important factor of shooting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have to look at it. I don't have to think about it. I can just go and I know where everything is at. I know how to clear it. And I know how to work malfunctions and all of that. So even the small ones are identical.
Glocks don't malfunction, Josh.
I have never had a malfunction, actually, like a live malfunction. I've never had one in a Glock. We've done the exercises and I've had to set up stovepipes and double feeds and all of that, but I've never actually had one.
I
In a Glock?
You guys remember I don't know if the Air Force did this, but James and Rick probably remember this. Do you guys remember the day in basic where you did buddy ready, buddy moving?
Oh, yeah.
And the live fire version of that? First time
I never did live fire version of that.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't either.
We did a live fire exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
It was like a 50 cal. It was a good 20 feet
I've
above
done
your
tactical
head, but
live fires, but I never did that. Just like a drill for buddy ready, buddy moving with.
Yeah. And anyway, so we had the brand new M16E2s at the time. First time I pulled the trigger on this brand new rifle, double feet. But that was the only malfunction I ever had on it. The rest of the time, it worked great.
I have been shooting Glock since 1991. I think that's when I got my first one. Got my first Glock 19 in Hawaii. And shot through Glocks probably between 10s to 100,000 rounds. And if you shoot enough cheap ammo through them, you will have malfunctions.
That's true for any gun.
I
don't have
there's this Egyptian ammo that back in the late 90s that had hard primers. and those would you'd shoot them, you'd pull them out, and they've got a primer dent on them, but they didn't go off. So you can try putting them in again.
Nice.
I have nothing really against Glocks. I don't own one. I don't particularly like shooting them. They rattle, which bothers me. I know that's not a defect. It's just some guns, when you shake them, they don't make any noise. Glocks, when you shake them, they rattle. They're perfectly fine. Totally acceptable firearms. I just don't own any, and I don't shoot them.
So obviously we need to do the either the Glock episode or the pistol episode of the military science fiction.
For sure.
One thing,
You guys all need to come here, and we'll go shooting, and we'll shoot a bunch of different guns.
Great.
That could be our
We need to
episode.
tell Lee Child that Glocks don't have a safety. That's what we need to do.
Did he put a safety in one of his books?
Yes.
On a
He's
Glock?
horrible in the Reacher books. Yeah.
Oh,
I just bought a semi-automatic shotgun that I haven't played with yet. I'm pretty
Oh,
excited to
nice.
take that out. It was just it was like $300.
Oh, I have one of those Turkish ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it fun?
I don't
like
want.
fun.
I didn't want it,
Yeah.
but it was $270.
Right.
I'm like, I might as well.
That's the thing.
my favorite firearm purchase in the last 2
It's never
years
jammed. It's never jammed on me.
Yeah.
is the X-Star EP9, which is the MP5 looking pistol that shoots 9mm and picks Glock magazines, and it has just been the most fun I've ever had shooting a gun. It's really cool, and we're totally off topic now.
I know.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to touch on, I was trying to find a way to how can I transition?
But there was a
So-
future kinetic weapons panel that I was on, so that is sort of on topic.
Yeah.
Let's
So I
wrap-
wanted to. So Josh, one of the things that we had touched on before was that this had been kind of the Bain conference. Bain appeared to have a much lower profile this time around. They did do the Bain Roadshow, which I wasn't able to go to. I don't know if that's just like their publishing roadmap. But one thing I thought was interesting about this, about the con that I hadn't expected, was other publishers had time to do their roadmap for the next year. It felt like Chris Kennedy Publishing had a really big presence. They did through a bunch of parties. Canon Publishing that I had not heard of before. Raconteur was another one I hadn't heard of. And they were all using, what's that?
Three Ravens.
Three Ravens. Yeah. I mean, they were all using.
Those are all. They're not directly Bain imprints, but they're all closely tied to Bain. I know Chris Kennedy Publishing is super connected with Bain at this point. Raconteur is Tony's neighbor. No, Three Ravens is Tony's neighbor, Hillbilly. So those are all very closely tied to Bain in that respect.
And I mean, in the current iteration, I mean, one of the things people were joking about was that if you didn't have a contract, you were going to leave this con with some form of a commitment as a writer. But I don't know. I hadn't seen a place where you had if that's what you're looking for, there were great opportunities to talk to editors and publishers. And I mean, most of them are all royalty share. They're all, the kind of business model that we've gotten used to, and had some conversations with people that were, well, I've been told I should never do royalty share. I'm like, well, I don't know if you're going to get a contract in the current market then.
I mean, all contracts are royalty share, right?
I mean, they
well,
basically
to an extent. Yeah. But then I talked to people
I didn't make a commitment, but I recommitted to my hatred for coffee. I went to the coffee clutch, and it had been so long since I tried it, and he's like, I'm just going to try this just because there's nothing else to drink here. Maybe as I've gotten older, my tastes have changed. They have not.
They have not.
Tell you, the one takeaway from cons in general that I think is the best value of a con is the meet and greet, the getting out there, talking to people, making contacts. Like last year at LibertyCon, I was in an elevator, and Tony Weiskopf came in, and Larry Correa was in the elevator, and there was a bunch of other big time people. It just happened to be a coincidence that I stepped in, and once the doors closed,
and then Jeff pulled his shield up and beat them all up.
Before we start, does anybody want to get out? No. I turned around and said, I said, now that I have you all here, let me tell you about my fantasy novel. 10,000 years ago, and Tony just let out this groan, just please don't. I'm it was obvious I was joking, but it's a great way to meet people, to make contacts, even if they don't turn into business opportunities. That con, the repetition of meeting people and getting your name out there and getting people to know you. And half of this business, when it comes to working with publishers, and this is indie publishers, it's traditional publishers, is the publisher knowing that you're someone they want to work with. Like I know, like certain publishers who would rather work with somebody that was easy to work with and turned in 3 books a year than somebody who was a pain in their rear end and turned in 6. Because eventually the pain in the rear end is going to be cost more time and money than they're going to make. And so getting yourself out there, letting people know that you're easy to work with, that you're excited and passionate about what you're doing, is really beneficial to your career. All of my good deals I've made in the last 7 years have come from me showing up at cons and putting myself out there and talking to people.
And I would say too, like, if you see people, so at least here, the culture seemed to be that people were doing, hotel room parties. They would say like Chris Kennedy had a party. Don't assume it's just for Chris Kennedy authors. Like if they announce it at the intro, which they did in this case, go there and, meet people. People were hanging out in the hallways talking. It was just
smell was incredible.
What's that? The smell? Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people in a tight place.
The air conditioner wasn't working right.
And the AC, I felt like they did that on purpose, but it was just the opportunity to get to know people. And like, I don't have Jeff's skills when it comes to being like, lead the conversation like that, but people were just super open to talking about whatever. And, I got to talk to Tim Akers. So I've enjoyed his books, and I just hadn't realized he was going to be there. And so I got a chance to talk with him. He had a lot of interesting things to say about publishing in general. Yeah. I don't want to say the guy's salty, but he's check out his Facebook and you can get his opinions there. But he's had a lot of experience with getting bounced around among publishers throughout his career. So he had a lot of stuff to share.
I wanted to read the prologue for that fantasy novel that I keep wanting to write.
Yeah. And so that, I think for me, that was like, I mean, the con was only $60, but that was the price of admission right there. Like it was so just awesome getting to talk to people, hang out. There wasn't as much of that in the panels because it was just so busy. I'd say if you do anything, definitely go to the social events and talk to people. But yeah, it really felt like these other publishers, like if Bain just doesn't want to have the same presence, these other publishers definitely did. And they were being, really open about that. So I'd be curious to see what that looks like next year.
And there's a lot of cons you can go to, not just LibertyCon. There's one in Virginia called RavenCon that is in April, in spring, that is pretty popular. There's LTUE. There's the one that Rick and I are going to at the end of the week called Writers Cantina. And while Writers Cantina is not directly ran by Larry Correia, it is heavily associated with him. Partly because there was a lot of drama with LTUE, which is Life at the University and everything. It's a con here in Utah. And bear in mind, there's a difference between a writer's con and a fan con. So Dragon Con is a fan con that writers go to.
But I was just going to say,
yeah, also actors. And
it's also huge.
It's also huge. Like 100,000 people show up. So
there was and I've only been to 2 different types of cons. Like I've been to 20 Books and I've been to Dragon Con and I've been to OWFI, which is a small writer federation in Oklahoma. But the difference in like when I used to go to 20 Books, I was just going to hang out with my author friends. Like, but that was my kind of writer retreat for the year. At Dragon Con, there's so much opportunity to meet existing fans, but also to make new fans and new readers of your stuff.
Unfortunately, Dragon Con suffers from the fact that you're surrounded by tens of thousands of people, and meeting or running into anyone without like arranging it beforehand becomes a lot more difficult.
Well, I think in terms of, for me in particular, and then for the Athon authors, like we had a huge booth. We had a schedule of when your authors were going to be there. So if you wanted to meet the person, you could come there and meet at the time. But because I was in the booth all the time and Jeff was in the booth all the time, we got to meet people over and like hourly. We were meeting people and introducing people to our stuff.
Fun. That was the most fun I've had at a con, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were buying our books. They were buying other people's books. And, it was really actually what the funnest thing about that was selling Jeff's book right next to Jeff and him selling my book right next to me to 2 different kinds of people. And the fan con for me was fun. I didn't go to any of the panels in Dragon Con, but just meeting readers and potential new readers was great during the day. And then at the nighttime, they had some of those get-togethers, those writer social gala. Bane had a room. Athon, we had a huge get-together in the bar at the hotel that we were at, and even if you just go over to one of the hotels in the lobby, everybody's usually hanging around, and so it's really nice to be able to have it both ways, kind of, where you can meet new readers and talk to your fans or whatever, but then also have a little bit of time to go and see your friends. I got to see Casey Azell and a whole bunch of other people while we were there, and that was super
This is
fun.
great.
Yeah.
Casey was at Liberty.
One of the
So
things,
Jessica Small and a whole bunch of other people I knew.
just in general, like general con advice is know which kind of con you're going to. Is it a fan con? Is it a writer's con? Know what the panels are about. Like the first year I went to Dragon, I was really surprised that all the panels that I went to were mostly just people talking about things that they weren't directly involved in. Like there was the future of the Halo franchise, and I was like, oh, cool, this would be a great panel. And I go there, and it's like 5 guys who've played Halo talking about Halo. I mean, that's cool.
And they're
and
just
all,
speculating,
but they're not involved in Halo,
right?
And so bear that in mind when you're going to a con, what the panels are for. Do a lot of research beforehand. It's not that difficult, but to figure out who's on the panels. If there's people you want to meet, you have to make that happen. So I knew when I was going to the year we went to 20 Books that Larry was going to be there. I knew I wanted to meet Larry. And so I cornered Richard Fox and had him introduce me to him. Because I'm old school. I'm a fan of being introduced to people by people so that your
Social proof
production has more weight. And same thing with David Weber and other people, and also be respectful of the more popular people's space, because Rick knows this and Josh knows this. If Larry's at a con, there's a line of people waiting to talk to him. If David Weber's at a con, there's a line of people waiting to talk to him. There's certain people who because they're extroverted authors or because they're just popular in their niche, that when they go places, there's a line of people who form up to talk with them. Chris Fox is like that. He doesn't go to cons anymore, but when he used to go 20 Books, he'd be going between one discussion to another, and someone would stop him in the hallway, and all of a sudden 50 people were there all trying to pick his brain. So just, be respectful of people's time, but also if you want to meet somebody, you've got to make that happen. You can't rely on running into them at a panel or bumping him to the hallway. You kind of have to be a little bit of a stalker, to be honest.
Yeah,
well,
that's true.
I mean, that was one of the weird things about 20 Books. I don't think anybody knew Larry Correa. So that was one place where I didn't see him. If you wanted to walk up and talk to him, you could. It was just right there. But so one of the things, like speaking of meeting people who are doing panels or things like that, like something to think about that our friend Lisa got put on a lot of panels. And a big part of that is always just the quick 5-second introduction. I'm James Assarin. I'm the author of blah, blah, blah. It's a good time to hone like what that pitch is and pay attention to what people might zone in on, or if they start fading out while you're explaining something, or maybe your titles aren't quite as like effective as you think they are, especially if they have a lot of like alien words or things like that in them. That's a good way to tell. But practice what you're going to say there, so it easily rolls off your tongue. You can tell if it's awkward, and make it relevant to the people that you're talking about. Mal Cooper was the guest of honor, so I tended to mention that I'd written an AN 14, and then, boom, I can start talking to people. And think about those kind of things when you go in, because you have such a short amount of time to make any kind of connection with somebody. The other thing that I just wanted to mention that I thought was funny, like I don't even have business cards in my day job anymore, but people did want they wanted cards. Like several times people were asking me, do you have a card? Do you have a card? I'm like, no, I don't. Go to my website. But I mean, it was nice if you had a connection with somebody, you're talking, you're getting ready to end it. It did feel like just a nice little thing to like have that exchange of cards. Like I give a shit about you. Here, take this thing. But so I don't know. That was
really that expensive.
I feel like Joe Pesci from Wise Guys. You think I should give you a card? What is your birthday?
I know, but that was something that surprised me. I didn't think that. I thought that was pretty much gone. And
going to cons, it is important to make an investment in your future, because that's kind of what cons are. Like if you're going to a fan con as a fan, go as a fan and enjoy yourself. Don't worry about it. But if you're going as an author and you're looking to make connections and you're looking to invest in yourself, spend the $50, get yourself some nicely designed business cards, and with your book covers on them and your name and an easy way for people to contact you that isn't overly complicated. So no, the turning of the Dale 11749 at gmail.com. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be simple. Your name
So
at something or your phone number.
I had when I was doing keystroke, I had two made up. I had my author one was my socials and then book covers on the back. I wouldn't suggest this, maybe one book cover. What I would suggest is that a QR code.
Yeah.
At least somewhere on your card have a QR code, because I've even before Dragon Con, you give somebody your card, how many times you're going to go on your phone and type in the address or get home and remember to type in the address? You're just not. You're not.
All I
going
do
to,
when
but
I
if-
get a card from somebody is take a picture of it
Me too.
yeah.
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 It was more the exchange of
and I
like,
throw it away.
hey, it was
For
kind of
sure.
an indicator that, hey, I'd like to keep talking to you outside of this, so it's like
Yeah.
that, so that was just something I noted that I hadn't run into in other cons. So maybe they're coming
I
back.
don't really want to talk to you any further, but I'm going to make it sound like I do. Here you go.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to note was, I've been in the process of pulling off Facebook for the past year. Everybody was on Facebook. Like it was Messenger. It was, if I'm going to find you, I got to find you on Facebook. So think about that. Like if you haven't updated you might update your Facebook and then just be ready to, like I even had it installed on my phone. So I had to like reinstall it and go through all that, garbage so I could look people up. So that, that might be something to think about if you're going to cons as well. Like that's just a quick way to find people, or if you meet somebody, you can, look them up on Facebook. It's actually good as a Facebook, which
And let me give people another bit of advice. If you're going as an author, be humble. Doesn't matter if you go into a panel and think you know more than the people who are on the panel. Don't like be coming up to them afterwards and trying to prove to them how knowledgeable you are on that panel, on that subject, because none of them care. So, and if you want to try to get onto panels, your best bet is to make friends with the people who start the panels in the first place, the people who organize them, the people who have the ideas for them. Get in with them, say you're interested. Don't be obnoxious at the panel. All that does is make people not want to.
right.
It's really counterintuitive almost, and it's almost like too silly to say, but we're all kind of established in our field, and we've got friends that are established, and we might not be famous in and of our own right, but if we go somewhere, someone's going to recognize us and say hi, and they might just be a friend or another author or something, and that's great. I love when people see me and recognize me and say hi. But it's the if you're not established and you're looking, like Rick said, to get on panels, or you're looking to get in with a publisher, or you're looking to have an in with like an author or something like that, the best way to not do that is go up and talk about your book. The best way to get in, and this is why I say it sounds counterintuitive, the best way to get in with a publisher or an author that's good with a publisher, or work your way into that group, is to just go in and be yourself and just talk about life, right? Like
Unless you're totally uninteresting, of course.
Well, but somebody has something that they do other than writing books, or have interests that are in not writing books. And as authors, we talk about writing books all the time. And as nice as I am, and as understanding as I am, I don't want to listen to your pitch for a book. I don't want to. And if you want to hang out and talk about, I don't know, Chiefs football or something, yeah, let's talk about that and build a relationship on something other than you just trying to
It wasn't one of your
get me
guys
to
arrested
read your
recently?
book. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I'll say as writers, like I don't want to cut you off, Josh, if you're trying to finish.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
As writers, it's almost like in that shift in a conversation when you realize like we have nothing to talk about. So I say, how about the weather? Like as a writer, if I say, so what you working on, or tell me about your books, like then it's like, oh God. So it's more like just, if I like you, I'll want to help you. And so if we talk, get to know someone as a person, like where they come from, where they, just all those things that people do love to talk about themselves. So, but that kind of connection is so much better than walking up to somebody after the panel and trying to one up them on the amount of knowledge you have. Like, I'm not going to be amazed by your knowledge of Ukrainian drones and all of a sudden want to hear about your book project. Like, it's not why we're here.
Right.
Just be aware where you are in the social hierarchy, right? Because there is a hierarchy. And when you're talking to someone who's above you in the hierarchy, do not open with, let me tell you about this book that I'm writing. There's this really interesting character, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares, right? Ask them about the book stuff they're working on, and then one day,
or better yet,
and you
tell
work
them
hard,
how much you enjoyed their book that you read.
You will be, exactly. You will be above the people you're talking to in the social hierarchy. And then at that point, if you want to tell them about your book, they'll be interested.
Yeah.
But people above you on the hierarchy are not interested in hearing about the book you're working on.
Or DChess, if you can do your research, talk to them about an author they like.
Oh,
like some other author.
Make it about the person you're talking to, not about yourself.
Yeah.
And
some authors, some science fiction authors, genre authors are sensitive about talking about their own writing. There are a lot of people that are awkward receiving praise. But if you talk about another writer or another book series that they like, you'll get them just going on and on.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. I had a great conversation with Ari Salvatore once when I met him way back long before I was a writer, where I didn't know it was him because it was before the internet, and so I didn't know what he looked like, and the picture on the back of his book didn't really do him justice. And I just happened to be in a bookstore I was there to meet him because he was doing a signing, but he was down browsing books or whatever, and he was in the fantasy section. And I was talking to the girl who worked there, and he was talking to her, and I was like, "Well, Ari Salvatore is like my favorite author. He's one of the best." And I didn't know it was him. And he's like, "Well, I think C.S. Lewis is much better than me." And then I was like, so just be aware of what people look like and who you're talking to.
And the only thing I'll say too,
Ari Salvatore is the worst author in the world. I can't believe they're doing a signing here for this guy.
That guy's a hack. But in this business too, you never quite know who you might be talking to. So try not to be, don't just straight up blow people off. But because you just never know, the person you talk to that didn't have a book or whatever, then next year it could be. Publishing is just so weird. You could have somebody with like 2 books out, and because they got the deal they wanted, they're now whatever higher.
I've got a friend who is a guest of honor at a huge con, and in my opinion, they don't really write sci-fi, but they're a guest of honor at a sci-fi con, and it's because they have a traditionally published book. And so just be aware of who you're
all that stuff is relative, but there are
one of the greatest stories that I've had from going to a con and meeting a fan, and that fan kind of bridging the gap between starting a business relationship and just having an interesting encounter was this woman at Dragon Con who was cosplaying as what's that Jedi from the first Thrawn trilogy?
Oh, Mara Jade. Yeah.
She was cosplaying as Mara Jade, and she had been coming to Dragon Con for like 3 years and trying to meet Tim Zahn and couldn't ever do it. Well, he happened to be at our table, and she happened to be walking by and literally did a double take as she's walking by. And Tim wasn't doing a signing. He just stopped randomly to say hi. And it was.
I would like to point out he stopped to say hi to me.
I
invited him up there.
What was it you just said about being humble, Jeff?
No, that was Rick.
Actually, I said that.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff is the reason I said that.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it was a great interaction, and that interaction turned into a little bit more conversation as she started telling us her story. And, then she started talking about trying to write a book and all of that. And both Jeff and I were both, I think, more open to listening to her talk about that because of everything else, because of the setting and kind of the place where
that was one of those magical experiences that you don't get that often.
Doesn't happen very often.
No.
Yeah.
And also it helps that Tim Zahn is just one of the nicest human beings you will ever meet, and as humble as the day is long. He is just, he's very unassuming. You wouldn't expect it. I don't know what you would expect, but Tim, who he is, it was not what I expected. And he's just a pleasure to know and meet and talk to, and very nice, gracious guy. And he took pictures with her, and he was really just happy to well, I mean, she was cosplaying a character he created. I mean, how would you feel? You know,
I know.
Yeah.
but he's been doing this for 30 years, and so you think that he'd get tired of it, but no, if he didn't show it.
And that was, one thing I wanted to mention too about this con that I thought was really inspiring to me anyway. Like Chuck Gannon was there, who I have so much respect for him. And
Chuck
that
is a
guy
great
was
guy.
doing panels, selling books, talking to people, like just doing the work. Tim Akers was doing the same thing. He had a table. Like I guess you think of somebody reaching a certain point, but no, it's all about selling books, talking to people, being there for that interaction and open to it. So that was pretty inspiring too. So I think we're about at an hour. Is there anything anybody else wanted to
On
touch
that
on
note,
that we hadn't shared? Some advice or another con? Like I said, this LibertyCon in general, if we've sold you on it, sells out in about an hour, and it's going to be open July 20th this year. So if you're interested, check that out. And you also get the hotel when you reserve it. But anything else anybody wanted to share?
just general con stuff. Just be aware of your surroundings when you're at a con. Especially if you're a woman and you're going to a con by yourself, find a group of people to be with so that you feel more comfortable and you're not alone in those hallways. And especially with fan cons, there's people wearing masks and costumes and things like that. So just be aware of your surroundings, be safe.
Yep.
Let people know where you're going and what you're doing.
I would say if you're
we're
coming
alone.
to Dragon Con, come to the table, but I don't think this is going to air by the time Dragon Con happens.
So speaking of that, this will most likely be our first episode through the magic of editing, so we can be timely.
I was late to the first episode,
I know.
James. Come on,
I know, Josh.
man.
I don't want to do that to you, but you're in the intro, and we built up suspension tension by saying Josh is going to be here. We think so.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I should have had some dramatic entrance.
Dun, dun, dun.
Also, pay attention to where the room parties are.
Yeah.
Always free booze.
Oh yeah.
There was also
Good
free
call.
booze.
There's also free food at the con suite.
The con suite
So
had free beer,
if you're low on fundage and don't want to spend a lot of money at the restaurants, you can get free food a lot of places.
Yeah. Yep.
Or also, I mean, I hesitate to say this, but if you happen to know somebody who is throwing a dinner party or something like that, oftentimes that's all catered and paid for by either the person who's throwing it or the publisher. So
Yep.
And on that note, we should probably wrap it up.
All right.
Cool.
So if this is our inaugural episode, check us out weekly. We'll be on YouTube and the various podcasting places. MILSFPOD.com, and come to our Discord. The link will be in the show notes and things of that nature. So, all right. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Adios, ladies and gentlemen.